talk about Nathan Weeks, who would enter the prison system at just 15 years old with 17 years to do amateur crimes of robbing a pizza delivery guy for food with a broken gun and a rock in the sock. To show how prison can turn you into a criminal mastermind. With just a 7th grade education, he would net over $11 million, responsible for 3 murders. He would corrupt the warden, who would also be indicted, not only facilitating the contraband and helping him bring it in with drones and other means, would force officers to bring in contraband or lose their job while they were making millions through contraband, extortion. If they didn't pay the money, the warden would give the address of not only the inmate, but some of their family members that had a lot of money. And they would send videos through illegal cell phones, them torturing, stabbing, hog-tying to the family members. And at the same time, they would send drones to their house to stalk them at work, drop off messages, talk through them. Yet, the 3 murders that he called from his prison cell in special management maximum security lockdown, he was under investigation for some of these activities that were going on in the prison, would be his undoing. One of the murders, a truck driver for the canteen who was bringing in all types of dope, drones, guns, knives, whatever they wanted, eventually got busted bringing it in. It felt like he would rat. They whacked him. Another was a correctional officer who was also bringing in all types of contraband, substances, cell phones. She would get caught and get whacked as well. The third isn't that simple. They went after an officer that was not corruptible and threatened to blow the whistle off what was going on in that prison. They sent one of the members of his organization to whack him. They botched it and killed a 88-year-old innocent war veteran who had nothing to do with anything with corrections, dope, prison, just a mistaken identity. Got shot in his head in his sleep. Let's get into it. Understand the psychology of prison and how the inside runs the outside, and how someone could go in as just a kid, just kind of confused, and turn into one of the coldest, cunning, manipulated, just murderous criminal genius. This is a perfect example. Weeks, who received a 17-year prison sentence at the age of 15, who was robbing delivery drivers for food and a couple $100, now facing the death penalty and is accused of ordering the murder of at least 3 people on the outside to protect a lucrative contraband ring. One victim, an 88-year-old man who was shot to death in bed, prosecutors say was a mistaken identity. From robbing delivery drivers for food with a broken gun to corrupting a warden, Brian Adams, the disgraced warden of Smith State Prison, was arrested in February for allegedly being involved in a multi-million-dollar contraband scheme. We'd answer to Nathan Weeks. Weeks had only been in Smith Prison for 2 years now. He knew he had to show them that the inside runs the outside. Any officer that wouldn't get part of the program, threatened to snitch or run to any higher up, would either be threatened to lose their job by the warden or get murdered. First murder, Bobby Kicklighter, an 88-year-old resident of the Glenville, Georgia community, was found shot to death in his home. Investigators revealed that Kicklighter's murder was a botched assassination intended for a corrections officer at Smith State Prison. The intended target was known for intercepting contraband, and the murder was part of a larger scheme to inflict fear in all officers who wouldn't get down with the contraband movement. Listen to the warden, and it was all orchestrated by Weeks and a lockdown unit. Next murder will be Jessica J. Gerling. Gerling was a former corrections officer who was shot to death in Georgia. Her murder was linked to Weeks' contraband operation after she was no longer employed at the prison. Investigators would find that Weeks, along with associates Keisha Jones and Dennis Kraft, coordinated the crime to silence Gerling, stop her from testifying on the operation that they had going on in the prison worth over $11 million. It was said they were given 3 options. They bring that shit in and do what they're told. The warden will say, listen, you're going to lose your job if you don't get part of this. Or they face violence. Officers would be stabbed to death in the prison and murdered on the streets. Next victim that Weeks would order the death of was Jerry Lee Davis, a truck driver who was killed in Wayne County, Georgia. Davis worked as the delivery driver for a commissary supply company that delivered the commissary to Smith State Prison. His murder was connected to Weeks' contraband operation, as Davis was believed to have knowledge of the smuggling activities, as he was bringing all types of contraband in on his route. When he was knocked off, he lost contact with Weeks, where Weeks would order the hit from inside of his special management cell. Weeks, who came in as a young teenager for robbing delivery drivers, was able to corrupt the warden, make over $11 million, assassinate 3 officers, and run one of the biggest extortion operations in Georgia Department of Corrections history. Inmates were forced to pay protection money in exchange for safety or access to essential services in the prison. Those who could not pay or refused to comply were always targeted with violence, intimidation, and death. Protection was often extended to those involved in illegal activities or those who had valuable connections outside of the prison. Or if the warden just told them that this family has money, turning a blind eye to certain things that were happening in the prison, turning off surveillance, writing up reports, hiding inmates that were murdered, writing them up for however he wanted to. But also give the addresses of certain inmates that refused to pay his family members, not just their immediate family members. Say they had a cousin that had a lot of money or a girlfriend, whoever. They would use drones not only to bring the contraband in, but also as a tool for intimidation. Weeks could send threatening messages by using the drone to drop a message or a symbol associated with his gang or operation. He would stalk them for weeks at their work, their jobs, their daycares, whatever he would do to make them pay. As he would use contraband cell phones to directly contact inmates' families. He would send videos of them stabbed, beaten, and hogtied, threaten the families with severe consequences if they did not pay or cooperate with the demands of weeks' operation. Threats include violence both to inmates and to their families outside of prison. The use of family members as leverage was a common tactic. Inmates feared that if they didn't comply, their families would suffer. And the families feared if they didn't comply, their loved one in prison would suffer. When officers are dropping dead, a warden is in your pocket who is smuggling all types of contraband, helping hits happen, making bodies disappear, and giving the addresses of his own officers that don't comply. That's when you know it's survival of the fittest. This is where it's do or die. This is why organizations are founded. Not always to make money, but to protect other people from what's going on in the prison. You don't want to be part of this. This is how wars happen, bloodshed, riots. This organization, the Yves Saint Laurent Squad. I probably said that wrong. Weeks was running the show. He had officers that he was having babies with, dating, full-on relationships, $11 million on the streets, a warden in his pocket, the money, the power. He went by the name Cash, or the president. He had figured out how to pay off or threaten guards. Offered one of the biggest recruiting programs to get corrupt guards to work inside of Smith State Prison. He would pay them thousands of dollars to get the job and bring in drugs and jewelry and weapons and cell phones. And they really didn't get caught because he had the help of Warden Adams. One of the more brazen things, he would make a video inside Smith State Prison on social media where Weeks would brag about the squad's ability to continue the criminal activity behind bars. From that video, they would move him to special management unit. Like so many other inmates, it would only increase. Prison is all a mirage. Going to a lockdown unit just means you have less staff to worry about. People who want to work there get put there. So the warden will put the ones he wants there, bring everything in there, and it's a super controlled environment that only a few officers have privilege to go to. This is where he would truly crank up. Within just days of being in there, a veteran, Lieutenant Sherry Clark, who was with the Georgia Department of Corrections for over 17 years, would get indicted for taking $2,000. Weeks would have her move $30,000 to different associates all over the prison system and members of his organization on the outside, as long as pay some bribes to the warden. She would be arrested in criminal charges and lose everything she worked for $2,000. Ultimately, the murder of Kick Lighter, nothing to do with corrections, would open up Pandora's box. The getaway driver, Ariel Murphy, was a corrections officer. And the trigger man, Christopher Sumlin, became part of the organization while in prison, waiting instructions to carry out the murder on any corrections officer that didn't comply with the organization's needs. This just goes to show you that prison is one of the most dangerous places. The corruption, the chaos. If you're not prepared for this life, if you think you're a gangster, you're tied up, hogtied, and your family's getting threatened, who do you call when the warden is the one facilitating these crimes? Weeks is now in a federal detention center getting tried for the death penalty. Prison could turn you into the best version of yourself or into a monster. Or maybe they're both the same. But imagine living in here, making it out after all this, not affiliated to anything. How do you think you'd act when you came home? Stay out, stay free, us.
Racketeering, bribery, false statements, and violation